Hi, this is Dark Journalist. Today I have an exciting show for you as we welcome back Oxford scholar Dr. Joseph P. Farrell. Now, Dr. Farrell's keen geopolitical observations can be found at gizadeathstar.com, along with his fascinating book series. Today he joins us as the cloud of the deep state and the war machine hang just over the horizon. Now, Dr. Farrell sees a deep state coup in the making with the recent actions of the Trump administration against Syria. The reversal of Trump's non-interventionist policy in the matter of just a few days suggests neocon elements getting the upper hand in foreign policy decisions. Is Trump attempting to appease his domestic enemies? Here we go. Oxford scholar Dr. Joseph P. Farrell, The Deep State Coup.
What the Trump candidacy did was it changed the narrative completely. That this show that we have going on in Washington, D.C. isn't really running things. It's something else behind the scenes. The Syria strike business, sheer stupidity as far as I'm concerned. The whole thing has put the U.S. in a very bad, in my estimation, bad geopolitical position.
You know, I'm bringing you this special report and interview under unusual circumstances. The U.S. bombing of a Syrian airstrip in response to a chemical attack in a small Syrian village, allegedly by the Assad regime, just doesn't add up. First, it is highly unlikely that Assad performed this attack. Second, it's more likely the type of attack that we've seen by some rebel groups in Syria, including ISIL. Just before the incident, the Trump administration had thumbed its nose at the deep state war hawks and was engaged in a series of battles over CIA leaks that were meant to derail his Make America Great Again agenda. Now Trump supporters are looking with a weary eye at actions that seem far closer to neocon war hawk Hillary Clinton than they do to the non-interventionist that Trump campaigned as. Is the deep state setting the agenda and the trap? Let's go ask Dr. Joseph Farrell.
Dark Journalist. Go for truth in 2017. The deepest questions, the biggest secrets, the darkest mysteries. Dark Journalist. Go for truth. With top guests like Graham Hancock.
Graham, how do we as a society escape the grip of the deep state in the 21st century?
Rather than spending trillions of dollars every year on building up our armies and our weapons of mass destruction and creating a climate of hatred and fear and suspicion, we should be uniting as a human race.
Catherine Austin Fitts.
Catherine, what is the issue that's holding us back and destroying prosperity?
We have a system which is got a negative return on investment. It's killing human productivity, and where it's going is inhuman.
Dark Journalist. Go for truth. Visit darkjournalist.com and subscribe now for a special spring discount available for just $39 for 1 full year. You'll receive exclusive member benefits, including access to the complete high-quality audio archives to stream or download at your convenience, and subscriber-only content, including bonus show material. Sign up for our free newsletter to stay updated on the latest shows. Dark Journalist. This is the year. Now is the time.
You know, we need dark journalists, so just keep doing what you're doing.
Join us now and go for truth.
Well, hello everyone. I hope your spring is feeling good like it is over here in Boston. We had 80 degrees yesterday. Now that changed everyone's mood for the better, and of course it was perfect timing because we're looking at a crisis in world affairs developing now. The hit on the Syrian airbase without all of the necessary facts to justify it have put Americans and the Trump administration on a bad footing in our relationship with Russia. And this is the goal of the deep state, working closely with the media. And now the Trump White House sending very mixed signals. Not good, as they say. But we're so glad to have a real geopolitical expert, Dr. Joseph Farrell, back on the show to break it all down for you. Now, just a quick reminder here to go to darkjournalist.com to sign up for our newsletter so you don't miss any of the exciting shows we have coming up for you. Joseph, it's great to have you back with us.
Sure, thanks for having me back.
Now, we have a lot to cover, and I'm glad the timing is so good, because what we're seeing is the deep state make some serious moves to destabilize global affairs.
Yep.
Now, the CIA going public and helping the media with the whole phony Trump is a Russian agent narrative was a big alarm bell. And I know when Trump got into office, he surrounded himself with a lot of generals in high positions, a lot more than usual administrations would. And many people felt that was to prevent, a coup from taking place. And by the way, we didn't see Mad Dog Mattis, the actual defense secretary, in any of this Syria strike. It was all about General McMaster, who showed up on the National Security Council after the CIA did the big hit job on Flynn to get him out. And we understand there's tension with Bannon and McMaster, which is why Bannon got out of the NSC. But if you had to sum up what we've seen in the past few days versus the agenda that Trump came into office with, what would you call what it is we're seeing now?
I would call it a counter coup. I definitely. I would call it a neutering operation to basically neuter his support base and neuter his own policy agenda, such as it was, and make sure that he's compliant with the neocon, neoliberal, progressive empire. Let's build an empire, unipolar vision. And it certainly looks like this is exactly what has happened. And I mean, let's remember that President Trump back in 2013 was tweeting all of these tweets about, how dare the Obama administration even consider this? It needs the approval of Congress. And here he goes, shoots off a bunch of missiles.
With no authorization.
With no authorization from Congress. Now, I don't know what current powers he has to do such a thing. I'm certain that he does have them. Let's remember that Bill Clinton lobbed cruise missiles at Iraq, at Hussein, for an alleged plot against President Bush after he left office. So, and he didn't seek Congress approval.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently there's something there that they have. But nonetheless, it would have been nice to do so, particularly given that you've tweeted under similar circumstances prior to this action. You've tweeted that, this is what needs to be done. Well, he didn't do that. So again, he's being tremendously hypocritical, particularly for accusing the Obama administration of something that the Obama administration ultimately did not do.
Yeah.
And then turns around and does it himself.
Right.
And then, I keep going back to the fact, wait a minute, we're firing 60 or so, 59, let's round it up to 60. We're firing 60 cruise missiles at an airfield in Syria, and half of them don't even make the target. What's up with that? I'm suspecting that the Russians have used their electronic warfare capability, particularly since we already told them, hey, we're going to be launching some missiles. Make sure and have your air defense system turned on. In other words,
and scramble those missiles.
Yeah, get those Russian and Syrian airplanes off of that airfield, which apparently wasn't damaged all that much. And again, even there, we're confronted with the story. The Russians are saying, well, it wasn't damaged that much, and some of the American corporate media is saying heavy damage. I don't know.
I know. Can we get one real story out of that reporting?
Yeah, precisely. Can we get the truth here from somebody? And
we don't even have the truth on the chemical attack.
Yeah, exactly. And then you see pictures. Okay, if this is sarin gas, what are these people supposedly helping the victims going in there without any sort of hazmat skin protections? Sarin will kill you if it makes contact with your skin. So they're going in there and cleaning. Wait a minute. Whoa. And then we get the story, oh, no, this was a chemical weapons stockpile of rebels that were stockpiling stuff there, and the explosions caused this damage, to release all these chemicals. Well, then you have to ask, well, what are the rebels doing with these chemicals, and how did they get them? And you come up and discover that, Seymour Hersh exposed, I think a few months ago, that Hillary Clinton and the Obama administration were trying to help supply and train these rebels in how to use chemical weapons. Say what?
Wow.
They seem hell-bent on starting a war. And this is the only rationalization I can see for it. And yeah, you're right. Where are these generals? Mad Dog Mattis, where is he? All of a sudden, we're talking with McMaster.
Yeah.
What?
McMaster's the face of this operation. There's no question.
Yeah.
Well, McMaster's an interesting case, so let's take a closer look at him. As we stated, he was the replacement for Flynn on the National Security Council, and the CIA and the media were quite the tag team, working closely together to take Flynn out, and that looks now like it was calculated to get McMaster in. And then shortly after that, we've got Bannon being thrown off the National Security Council, and his decision-making process is out of there, and that leaves the way for the deep state to come in with their plans.
Right.
Now, with McMaster calling the shots, it's looking more and more like a deep state takeover of the National Security Council.
Yeah. And, for the life of me, I cannot figure out what all the hubbub over Flynn was. So he talked to a Russian diplomat. Big deal. This is what you would do as an incoming administration.
Right.
And if I remember correctly, as I recall, General Flynn made it very clear, well, yeah, we can talk about that, but you'll have to wait until after, he said something to the effect, you'll have to wait until after the administration takes office before we can make any sort of commitments or anything. But, I've got you down in the book, Why, I've racked my brains. Why are these people so god awful afraid of Russia? I really go back to the fact that I think that they are deathly afraid of the fact that Russia is, if you follow the pronouncements of the people, not only including Putin, but the people around Mr. Putin, they've been challenging this whole global New World Order unipolar narrative that the United States has been trying to put into public consciousness for so long. I think that's what they're afraid of, and they realize that unless they can get rid of Putin somehow and bring back an Atlanticist, Yeltsin-style corruption there, that they've got a real problem with Russia. But even there, I'm wondering how effective that is, because China's not going to play along with that. Japan increasingly looks like it's not going to play along with that. So I don't, none of this makes sense to me other than these neocon oligarchs are just power hungry and insane. I hate to put it that way, but that's, I think, the bottom line. I think they're just genuinely so power hungry and so insane they'll risk anything at this point.
And we had Trump coming in as an outsider on a certain level, for sure.
Sure.
And he came in with a certain set of ideas. He was anti-NAFTA, no TPP,
right?
Which Bernie Sanders agreed with him on, which is kind of fascinating. Yeah. Like, he got across the boards, promising. The whole America First stuff, anti-vaccine stuff with Robert Kennedy Jr., I mean, this is a whole different kind of a wave coming in on, and it looks, America first, and don't get involved in all these wars and this whole bit.
Right.
So then we see a big turnaround. He has a lot of problems on the way in. The CIA leaking a story by the week, pretty much, damaging story. The media trying to make it Watergate by the time he's sworn in, over nothing, that they don't really have anything. As a matter of fact, I'm shocked by the Russia story. Because it's one thing, the stuff that followed Clinton around during his presidency, Whitewater and stuff, there were aspects to it that were there. At least they were following a trail. With Russia, it looks like they have nothing.
Nothing. Yeah. Right.
So they've kind of made it out of whole cloth.
They've made it out of whole cloth. And, I put this terrorist strike in St. Petersburg in the mix as well, because Putin was in St. Petersburg when this occurred.
Oh, whoa.
And to me, that's a clear message, from the West. And his response to that, to me, I've been saying for years that you keep playing the covert operations game. It's a game that two can play. And so far, the Russians have been exercising a great deal of restraint, but at this stage, I don't put anything past them, because you look at this from the Russian point of view, and it is constant pressure from the West on that country and constant provocation. We were the ones that created the mess in the Ukraine, not Vladimir Putin. I'm sorry, that narrative doesn't wash with me. We had the Soros people there. We had all those leftover Ukrainian fascists from World War II, Stefan Bandera and all of that, Angela Merkel and her wonderful ways. Yeah. This whole thing just does not look good if you're a Russian looking at what's happening. And sooner or later, we will cross a line and there will be a response. Putin's made it clear. Do another military thing like this in Syria and we will respond, and we will respond militarily. That's not good words. Mm-hmm. This is, Daniel, I haven't seen, to be frank with you, I have not seen tensions this high and the pressure on the Russian leadership this high since the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Wow.
I lived through that as a boy. I remember the tension in the country. I have not seen the United States, well, let's be honest, under the Cuban Missile Crisis, President Kennedy chose very carefully a measured response to that provocation.
Yes.
That he thought would be the way to avoid, the war hawks in the pentagram and give Khrushchev some maneuvering room. Because he had his hardliners, pressing, push the button, let's get it on.
Exactly.
I strongly suspect that Putin is under the same sort. I mean, think of Vladimir Zhirinovsky, just came out today and said, we ought to retaliate militarily against the United States.
Well, so he can get a lot of support now.
Yeah, exactly. So Putin has his own hardliners that he's got to deal with. And unlike Kennedy, this does not appear to be a rationalized, well thought out response in any way, shape, or fashion. This escalated things needlessly in a way that makes the Cuban Missile Crisis pale by comparison. Mm-hmm. And it has put Putin into the position that he had to respond with that statement. Another military strike, we respond militarily. So I think this is worse, to be quite frank with you, than the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Wow.
This is not 4D chess. This is 1D checkers at best.
Yeah.
This is totally nuts.
I don't think Putin has been doing very provocative stuff.
No, he hasn't.
Not at all.
He hasn't.
Yeah.
It
looks like he's helped to beat the heck out of the ISIL people.
That's what they don't like. And, part of this is the pipeline stuff there, the Saudis and Israelis versus the Russians and Iranians and the Turks. And that's part of it. But, I think they could sit down. It's all who gets to control Europe. Well, they could sit down and cut a deal with Russia and help fund the pipeline and have some equity in it. And both sides end up controlling Europe,
Right.
So I can't make sense of this. I just really can't. It's so there's no way to slice this and make it come out good.
It's funny because I did those interviews recently with Peter Dale Scott.
Right.
And he literally was like, the deep state, there's a split in the deep state, but the heavy duty people are going after Trump and trying to take him down. And he was adamant about it. And we know Professor Scott is like a liberal leftist. I mean,
I know he is.
He has no cause to say that, right?
Right.
So that whole wave of stuff, talking to him about it, and then next week this happening, my instant thought was the deep state won that little battle. It was a short fight. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very short fight. I think the same thing, that was always the model I was operating with Trump, was that There was a certain segment of the deep state supporting him. And I think this happening, yeah, I think that bad faction won it. I think the, whatever you want to call it, the Israeli, Saudi, fascist, neocon wing of the deep state won it. That's the way it looks to me.
And I want to go back to something you said about people coming out in certain circles and saying, well, this is 4D chess or something, like Steve Pieczenik and Robert Steele and this whole wave.
Yes.
They're saying, I have a background in intelligence, and kind of telling the alternative crowd
Yep.
exactly what they want to hear. Like saying, well, central banks run everything. And I mean, that's terribly original, right? How many times have we heard that? But I notice waves like this, with all of this airtime, and there's a flap of people doing this, I almost imagine that they're fed right into that independent media space to carry some meme along, instead of real breakthrough research.
They are.
And in this case, it's a whole anti-China, those Chinese communists thing. I mean, this isn't 50 years ago. A lot of this stuff seems like a distraction. So, in the mainstream media, you've got anti-Russia. And then in the alternative space, they're trying to push this anti-Chinese communist thing. That's not good for anybody, and we have to really identify where those streams are coming from.
That's why I put that Pieczenik video in my rant, because I thought, oh, come on, really, please, if you're gonna send message to China, pick up the damn phone and get Mr. Xi on the phone and say, look, you got to do something about this nutcase in North Korea.
Yeah.
But doing it at a summit meeting dinner,
I know.
A state affair. This is, and doing it by bombing Syria.
Yeah. Well, the staff shuffling that was taking place in the run-up to this strike should tell us a lot, really. We had Steve Bannon, the former editor at Breitbart, who became basically the campaign manager and helped Trump win. He lost power in this whole shakeup and was actually removed from the National Security Council. That's one. Before that, Flynn, and we talked about that, the team really that was identified with the campaign and Trump winning is all but gone, really. So now we have Jared Kushner being elevated to this major power spot. So where does this go?
The Kushners that have links to Soros and all of that ilk. There's no way for me to put a good spin on this.
That's a bad family train right there.
That's a very bad family train.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can't, I was floored, not only at the stupidity of it, the Russian reaction to it tells me that, hey, they're taking this pretty damn seriously.
Right.
They've trotted out Dmitry Medvedev again, who's...
I haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah, who's this pro-globalist Atlanticist saying, well, this has ruined Russian-American relations. His words, not mine. And then withdrawing their protocols for rules of engagement in Syria. They're not going to be concerned anymore about safety of American aircraft, and sending a missile frigate to the Eastern Mediterranean, plus the fact that about half of our Tomahawk cruise missiles, for some reason, don't even land on target, which makes me wonder just exactly what's going on there. I'm thinking U.S. Donald Cook incident all over again. Well, if we can't hit anything, and if half of our missiles in an operation all go astray, maybe it's not a good idea to be picking fights with Russia right now.
Right.
But, hey, that's just me. Just, Daniel, I can't make sense of it. I really can't make sense of it.
It's so interesting because this kind of geopolitical analysis is right up your alley. But to get this working conclusion of a deep state coup that we're right in the middle of, and we could say, well, Trump screwed up, he turned on his base. And honestly, I prefer the Trump from 2 months ago.
Yeah, I did too.
Who, although he was getting his butt kicked in the media, he was pressing on. He was talking directly to the American people. He had a more we can do it attitude about restoring the country. Now, after the strike, we have Bilderbergers like Fareed Zakaria or, Brian Williams saying that his airstrikes are beautiful, and Fareed calling him a great president, well, then you have problems.
Oh, and the McCain, the Senator McInsanes, John McCain and Lindsey Graham Cracker and Nancy Pelosi and people of that ilk praising this action, that ought to tell you something right there.
Yeah.
But the real feeling is, come on, we can both say it. The real feeling that we're experiencing, coup d'etat.
Yeah.
Coup d'etat.
Yeah, no question. This is definitely the feeling. And I think we can kind of see it was the events leading up to this strike that really, where we see the turning taking place. But something I do want to point out here is that the Chinese president was here visiting. And the thing that's coming out of the alternative media that we've been talking about is this strange push, this big anti-communist push. Somehow the appearance of, this deep state coup idea, this whole changeover happening, this whole mood, Trump turning, bombing Syria. And then we have this Chinese aspect where people are deflecting it in certain corners of alternative media with aren't the communist Chinese bad? And then, of course, on the flip side, we have the media pushing for Cold War II and anti-Russia. Something about all three of these, streams and themes coming in all at the same time, something very unusual is going on here. And in independent circles, we're getting that whole, well, it's 4D chess, and, they did this while the Chinese president was here on purpose. None of this stuff makes sense.
No, I don't think so either. I can't rationalize, the Chinese economy is much more fragile than people think it is. And I can't see why you would rub the face of Mr. Xi in such egregious breaches of protocol. Let's remember that on President Obama's last trip to China, they basically, rubbed his nose in it by making him get off the airplane, out of the back of the airplane and not having anybody there to greet him.
Yes.
He was just basically, here's your luggage, go, So maybe it's retaliation for that. But again, if you invite the Chinese leader to this country, have a summit, and then, do little things that protocol-wise are designed to upset the Chinese, not the least of which is a missile strike against Syria as you're, sitting down to dinner. To me, that's not 4D chess. That's 1D chess. And like I say, if you're going to send a message to China, what you do is you park a carrier battle group near their islands that they're building in the South China Sea, and park a couple nuclear submarines and attack submarines in the area. You don't need to launch missile strikes against a country thousands of miles away.
Yes.
to send a message to them and kill a bunch of innocent Syrians in the process. That's not 4D chess. That's stupidity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's stupidity at a multitude of levels, because not only are you not picking a measured response, as President Kennedy did during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and there was real provocation there. There was no provocation from Syria against us, even if they did use poison gas. It's their country. He is the legitimately recognized government under international law.
Right.
Whether we like it or not. So, this was not aggression against the United States. He may be a thug. He probably is a thug. But how does that rationalize and justify us basically committing an act of war against their country, which we've been committing for a very long time?
Well, it's fascinating because the push is for this Cold War II.
Right.
Because they need that, and they need a nuclear enemy.
Right.
They are, something that's come up recently in one of the Dark Journalist shows was about how all this generation of nuclear weapons are being upgraded,
Right.
and that Obama signed on to that to the tune of $1 trillion.
Yes, he did.
That type of thing you really probably can't get away with without nuclear tension somewhere.
Right, but the problem is this new generation of nuclear weapons. If you follow the what's out there in the alternative media, and that has been out there really since the 1990s, the Red Mercury scare and all that, which I've also blogged about just before the Trump rant.
That is an amazing story, by the way.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you stop and think about it. You've got this fictional, supposedly, substance that can initiate thermonuclear fusion without the need of an atom bomb to set it off. Well, that's pretty cool. Do not pass nuclear weapons. Go directly to thermonuclear,
right?
And drop hydrogen bombs on your favorite enemy without obliterating the rest of the world with radiation fallout. Gee, cool,
This incident caused quite a disturbance down there, though. They reported it in the Atlanta newspaper, like you said, and it was this guy coming in with red mercury and saying, "I have red mercury."
Yeah. Okay. and we're going to close down a bunch of downtown Atlanta, and a bridge catches on fire. The last time I looked, bridges don't catch fire very easily. But anyway, laying all that aside, it is possible. I think if you were to take uranium, highly enriched uranium or plutonium or something, and subject it to compressed deuterium, you might be able to get some sort of low grade, low radioactive fusion device out of it. So let's look then at the idea of a Cold War 2.0 scenario here with a whole new brand of nuclear weapons that do not have the consequences that the old time 1960s big bomb things had. To a certain extent, then, if you've got access to that kind of stuff, it makes nuclear wars thinkable. And that's bad news all the way around. And the other part of this that disturbs me, Daniel, is that nobody is thinking in terms of prolonged covert operation type warfare, which is what this country has been waging for a very long time.
Right.
And so far, the response from China, from Russia, as far as I can tell, has been very, very low, if any at all. But you cannot tell me that they do not have a covert operations capability inside this country, as well as inside Europe. So the real question becomes, how then do they respond? Do they escalate immediately to nuclear? Well, probably not. So how are they going to respond if they respond? Well, they respond precisely by doing what we've been doing and attempting to exacerbate internal domestic tensions. I can see that happening in a heartbeat. Half of fully half of the country is blue, clustered along the coast, and the rest of the country is red. You can exacerbate that through covert operations. You can target and take out certain leaders of the opposition that you don't want around. If we're going to play the game, they can play it. This could turn into a full scale, like I've been saying for a long time, this could turn into a full scale mafia type war if they want to do that. And escalate to nuclear or even large scale conventional operations. Here again, Daniel, the problem is we're trying to run an empire with an all-volunteer army that's already overstretched. We're trying to run an empire with weapons systems that cost billions of dollars and don't perform as expected. Think the F-35, think the USS Gerald Ford, think the USS Zumwalt, where the Russians, if you look carefully at their weapons systems, they upgrade old weapon systems with electronic warfare capability that appears to be very efficient.
Right.
They've brought online a whole new generation of weapons, the Armada tank, these zircon-tipped cruise missiles, carrier killers. I would think twice before starting another Cold War 2.0. It won't work. I'll tell you what will result if it does go that way. It's going to drive Japan. It's going to drive Japan onto a very independent course. You can already see this happening with their rearmament. You can already see it happening with the deals that Putin and Abe signed last December during the Anshan summit.
Yeah. That couldn't have been good for us.
Oh, no, of course not. No, of course not. It's very good for the Russians because they're gaining a financial support mechanism other than China to develop their Siberian resources and infrastructure. Japan, by the same token, is gaining another power besides the United States that it can negotiate its interests with. And, by the same token, Japan is also gaining something that they really haven't had for a very long time, is via Russia a sort of direct communications line with China that they desperately need, in my opinion. So no, none of this is, the way it looks to me, Daniel, is that the United States is playing geopolitical checkers.
Yeah.
We bluffed our way through the Cold War and won that, but we're not playing poker anymore.
Well, it's fascinating. And one thing we have to mention about Japan is they are sitting there with North Korea lobbing these weird missiles over them into the Sea of Japan.
Right.
So, they're thinking we have to get more independent. We have to get nuclear.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Japan, in my opinion, has always been a turn-the-screw nuclear power. In other words, they've got all the components. They probably, and I mean that quite literally, they probably have all the components. All they need to do is assemble them, turn the screws, and voila, they have a hydrogen bomb capability, which they would not need to test. This is the other thing. How long have they been capable of this? They have the launch systems. They have global positioning satellites. So, it's not as if they are weak. To me, they've been a turn-the-screw nuclear power for a very long time, just like Germany. And all they need is a provocation. And let me tell you a story about that. A few years ago, I think about 2008, 2009, when the previous North Korean leader did the same thing, lobbed a few missiles over Japan. I was up, as I'm often am, up late at night into the wee hours of the morning, and I'm listening to the radio as I'm working, and it's the top or the bottom of the hour. And it was either a CBS or an ABC, I forget which network feed it was, that did the news. And it led with a story that appeared once and never repeated, that the Japanese foreign minister had responded to that little missile launch from North Korea and basically told North Korea, you'd better watch it because we can arm ourselves with nuclear weapons to the teeth in a fortnight.
Wow. Unbelievable.
And I remember that vividly, and I thought, okay, that was a little message from the Empire of the Rising Sun. Remember that Korean occupation, back in the 1910s and 20s.
Forget it. They're the most fierce of them all.
Oh yeah. Well, this is what people are forgetting. Japan, like Germany, has closed the nuclear fuel cycle decades ago. And people don't remember little stories like this, but I remember the story where the Clinton administration had successfully negotiated the Japanese to give up some of their stockpiled plutonium. Yeah, in excess of 9,000 pounds.
Wow.
Which is, folks, translated into conventional bomb speak, that's a heck of a lot of nuclear warheads.
Oh, yeah. Seriously dangerous.
Not just tens, not just hundreds, but we're talking thousands of nuclear bombs here.
Whoa.
And, think of the A bomb again as a fuse for the hydrogen bomb, which again, they're perfectly capable of doing. So they're a turn the screw nuclear power.
Yes.
So with all of this tension going on and neocon, neoliberal, progressive crazies in Washington, what would you do if you were Japanese?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
And it's compelling because we could say their legitimate fear is North Korea. And if Kim is crazy enough to fire at a U.S. ally, it's possible. So their nuclear fears are well-founded. And just as an aside here, the question is, what is it about Japan? They're the only country that has had an atomic weapon dropped on them. They have this massive earthquake that almost melts down the whole island because of the Fukushima nuclear reactor. It's very unhealthy after effects continue, by the way. But back to your point, if they are rearmed and nuclear, and they see our foreign policy as reckless, could we lose them as a powerful ally?
I think it's very probable over the long term.
Mm-hmm.
To me, this is what Japanese rearmament means. Mr. Abe crossed a very significant line last year or the year before, I forget exactly when it was, when they removed that 1% limit in the Japanese constitution as to what they could spend on defense. Now, you've got, the world's third or fourth largest economy, 1% of gross domestic product is a pretty large defense budget. But remove that restriction, and what do you have? You have the potential now for total Japanese rearmament. And the way the Abe government, I have to marvel at the care with which that government has been maneuvering diplomatically. Because on the one hand, they're saying to the United States, yes, we're agreeing with you. We need to take up more of the burden of our own defense, and we're willing to step right up and contribute too. Hint, hint, hint. Yeah, we're going to build our own bombs here. But anyway, I really think that plus Abe's visit to the Pearl Harbor Memorial last year, which was very significant. First time a Japanese leader has done that. Now, not the Japanese head of state. I think Hirohito paid some visits to the United States before he died. But this was the first time the actual political leader of Japan has been to Pearl Harbor. Now, significantly, he did not bow. He did not lay wreaths. He did not apologize. He was just there, and that's all he was doing. And again, very, very, very precisely calculated messages being sent.
Mm-hmm.
But over the long term, given the Japanese interest with the Russians and helping to develop Siberia and so on and so forth, and even talking with the Russians in terms of allowing the Russians to retain jurisdiction over the Kuril Islands, but allow the Japanese free access to it.
Mm-hmm.
This is a new one that the Abe government put into place at that summit last year. I think the Japanese, from looking at it, are thinking the long term. They realize that this empire is on its way out. It's the people running it are nuts. It's unstable. Its economy, they don't make anything over there. I think the Japanese have looked at the long-term consequences of 70 years of empire in this country and concluded that they must rearm over the long term. So yeah, eventually down the line, I think we could be looking at a nuclear Japan, and eventually they are not going to be the yes men for Washington that they have been thus far. Same thing with Europe. I don't see Europe sticking around forever with this crazy loony crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Pardon me, I really don't. So we're in a mess. we're in a geopolitical mess.
Yeah, there's no question. It is these forces of empire and our deep state with its intelligence components operating in this extra-constitutional fashion that is setting up this scenario. Now, Trump's election has only thwarted their plans for a short while. The next few months will be critical, and let's not forget, they need to cement these gains of power that they've made. Is it a deep state coup? Well, you can decide, but certainly something strange is going on because we see all the policies in reverse, out of the blue. Of course, we have to look back and say they did it with JFK, and they changed the course of history there. They attempted against Reagan, and with Bush waiting in the wings, and that was an assassination attempt with very unusual threads involved with the Bushes. But Reagan survived, and they found other ways to win, like Iran-Contra and the drug running. What I think we're seeing is a crisis developing in world affairs, and I do think with the rising awareness, there is a chance to pull this back from the perilous course that it apparently is on. There's a lot of elements in play here, so we're going to suss it out. Joseph, thank you. Just outstanding information. We're going to do a part 2 episode on how the deep state has developed into this kind of all-powerful shadow state, and how it was really the Kennedys who were the first to actually do battle with them, and what the stakes are all the way up to Trump's presidency and beyond. Dark Journalist subscribers will get that episode in their inbox next week. Now's the time to subscribe at darkjournalist.com for the episodes and to support this program at this crucial time. You can catch up with Joseph at GizaDeathStar.com. I recommend getting his book, The Third Way. Excellent geopolitical overview, and as only Joseph can write it. Joseph, thank you again, and let's do part 2.
Thanks for having me back, Daniel.
My pleasure. Thank you for joining me for this fascinating episode with Dr. Joseph Farrell on the deep state coup. You can find more special reports, deep interviews, and documentaries at www.darkjournalist.com. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel to receive the latest videos. See you soon.
Subscribe to our newsletter at darkjournalist.com to stay updated on the latest shows.